Lancelot lived in their little village under the lake, and remember, it's not in any way aquatic. The lake is just an elaborate illusion, though I think people feel water when they touch it. Lancelot grew up quickly and was basically the greatest and best at everything. He was tall but not too tall, muscular but not a meathead. His eyes were piercing, his jaw chiseled, and his abs washboardy. I don't think that's actually a word. But yes, the Lancelot of the French Vulgate, the obviously central character of the Lancelot Grail cycle, was handsome, smart, skilled at all manner of competition and weapons, and charming to boot. The French Vulgate has about 90 pages devoted to a civil war where Claudius hunted for Lancelot and his cousins, the rightful heirs to the throne of Ban and Boars. It led to greyhounds being confused for boys, boys being confused for greyhounds, dinner parties being interrupted by murder, and about a decade and a half of civil war, as people and lords rose up on behalf of Lancelot and his cousins. We are skipping through all of that, though. It's marginally interesting, but it has virtually no bearing on the larger Arthurian legends. We're going to fast forward to where Lancelot is 18. Vivienne knew she couldn't keep him there, cloistered in safety in the magical village. He was a man now. To hold such a magnificent warrior back from gaining renown was tantamount to sin. And so one day, she found him caring for his equipment after a hunt. She explained to him, in exhaustive detail, everything it took to be an honorable knight. And he must be an honorable one. It would mean giving your life, day in and day out, to protect the people, and them spending their lives to provide for you. It meant having two hearts, one of iron, a heart of stone toward the wicked and unjust, and a soft heart toward the innocent and the weak. He must never confuse the two. Most of all, it meant having a pure heart and swearing to hold yourself to a near impossible standard of conduct. Swearing such before God and the people. Lancelot thought about it for a moment, and though he had just learned of this thing called knighthood about 20 minutes ago, said that it would be his life's goal, and he wanted nothing more. All joking aside, I really do like the character of Lancelot. Sure, he's bordering on a Mary Sue at this point, and there's a link explaining what that means in the show notes, but you have that with medieval texts. You have to remember, too, that he hasn't been tested yet. It's easy to be the biggest fish in a small pond, or magical lake as in Lancelot's case, and it's easy to be honorable when your ideals and moral strength have never been challenged. He's a young man who is kind, charitable, and always seeking to improve himself in everything he does. Sure, he's borderline perfect now, but as you'll see, he doesn't stay that way, and the height at which he begins will make his fall all the more painful and tragic when it finally happens. Vivienne was happy her Lancelot would live up to his potential, but she met the news with a broken heart. Not only would he be leaving, but he would be going to Britain to join the court of the best king in the land, the magnificent King Arthur. Vivienne would take him, though it wasn't without some trepidation. Nearly 20 years on, Merlin may have forgotten how she left him without an explanation. Maybe, but the rumors she heard of him, about leading armies and massacring a ship of infants. At first, she was worried about running into him, but then she had an idea. Vivienne rode with Lancelot and a few others. It was an easy trip across the channel and a peaceful ride north to Camelot. She began to mourn, more and more, for the young man she had come to regard as her son. Now, he would be leaving her. They heard the noise of hounds up ahead. The time had come. They emerged from the trees, and Lancelot was struck by the splendor of it all. Up ahead, at the end of a winding, snaking road, was Camelot. The white towers and walls filled the horizon. Atop the hill in the center was the highest tower, the castle of King Arthur. It was so large that it nearly completely dwarfed the most powerful man in Britain, out with his household and hounds, on a hunt. They were taking a break, and the whole group stopped and stared when they saw the party emerge from the forest. Groups traveling to Camelot weren't really surprising. A Lady of the Lake, though, hadn't been seen for years, since the last one was beheaded in Camelot, and so Arthur took notice. The king himself, Arthur, was now in his mid-30s, and he approached the party with his seneschal. his brother Kay. Arthur greeted the Lady of the Lake, Vivian, who took the king aside privately, and Lancelot and the others talked with the knights, squires, pages, and servants who made up Arthur's hunting party. Arthur was dismayed that Vivian, the Lady of the Lake, would not be staying. I imagine he still harbored guilt after Balin, a knight that died a long time ago at this point, killed one of her own, a Lady of the Lake. Vivian said that just because she happened to live in a lake didn't mean that they were related, but you know what? Vivian said she did have a request. She looked around and saw that Lancelot was out of earshot. The young man with her, she said, he wanted to become a knight. She had raised him and trained him. He was ready. She knew it generally took years, but Vivian wanted Arthur to pledge to make the young man a knight as soon as he asked. Arthur paused. It was unorthodox, but he knew the power of strange women lying in ponds, and if she said he was good enough, then he was good enough. Nearly 20 years on, Arthur still wanted to make it right with the Lady of the Lake, even though they were basically unrelated. Besides, this young man looked strong and smart. He would make a fine knight. Arthur agreed. Nearly an hour later, the Lady of the Lake, Vivian, was provisioned and ready to set out on her own, back to Brittany. She just had to see Lancelot before she left, to give some words of advice and one final gift. She told him not to tell anyone his name. He said that this was easy. She had never told him his name. He had always been called the handsome foundling or the rich orphan in their village. She smiled and stroked his hair. She told him that he would find out soon enough, but he wasn't just some foundling. He was the son of a king and queen, and he would learn all about who he was. Anyway, most importantly, he must ask the king to make him a knight tomorrow and stay only one night in Camelot before leaving. She told Lancelot to not stay in one place longer than he had to, but to keep moving, to keep seeking renown and glory. It could have been that the Lady of the Lake truly wanted him to just gain renown, but my personal interpretation is that she was worried about Merlin. She was worried that the old wizard would learn of Lancelot and the Lady of the Lake and take his revenge on the boy she considered to be her son. That's why he must stay moving. He agreed and accepted one last gift from the only mother he had ever known, a ring. Like many rings in medieval literature, it, of course, was magic. It revealed when something had been enchanted, and it nullified it. Vivian looked around. It was already late afternoon. If she rode as fast as she could possibly make it to port by evening. She took Lancelot's hand in hers and told the boy that she thought of as his son, that she was proud of the man he had become. With that, she turned and left. Lancelot watched her go before walking back to Arthur's people. His people, now. One knight emerged from the crowd, with blonde hair. He wore a wide grin and had an easygoing manner about him. He said his name was Yvain, and he would be directing Lancelot's training. Vivian was on the road, riding as fast as she could for port. She didn't know what it was, but she had a terrible, panicked feeling. She had to get off the island. This was his land, and she had gone into exile 20 years ago because of his advances. Though they had both grown in power since she left, she knew that there had to be things that he withheld from her in her training. Then, the hairs on the back of her neck stood up as she approached a blind turn. Her whole being screamed against turning the corner, but it was too late. She did, and a lone rider sat in the middle of the road. Her horse skidded to a stop. It was the young nobleman, or what would have been the young nobleman 20 years on. "You made a promise to me," the nobleman said from atop his horse, his eyes not wavering from her. "All these years gone, and you're still lying," Vivian said. "Stop it, Merlin." In an instant, the man before her transformed from the still dashing nobleman in his late 30s to the wrinkled and worn wizard in his early 60s. "I made that promise to a handsome young nobleman, not some middle-aged wizard," she said. Then, most surprisingly, she watched Merlin's shoulders slump. He said that he understood. He was sorry. He told her that he still loved her even after all these years, and he began riding away. Vivian was surprised that was it. After all the years of hiding, all the years of fear, all the years of checking shadowed corners and watching who she got close to, that was all that the powerful Merlin did to her when she confronted him about the past? Wait, she told him. Stop. Let's talk. He perked up a bit and turned around. They rode together for 3 hours. She learned of his role in King Arthur's court, of the children on the May Day massacre, of the terrible choice, and of all that he had done for Arthur and Arthur's ancestors. It was obvious to her that he was weary. She guessed that he wanted to be finished with all this. The intrigue, the battles, the deception, the death. She was surprised to learn that he knew where she was the whole time, but he never came after her. Before they parted, she paused. She told him that she did love him once. Maybe she could love him again, but as Merlin, as himself, not some fake handsome nobleman. She had a proposition for him. As he apparently knew, she had been living in Brittany, in modern-day France. If he wanted to leave all of this behind, then he should meet her 1 year from today on the edge of the Brocéliande forest, near her lake. If he did, they would disappear together and live out the rest of their days far from the troubles and chaos of the British Isles. In the meantime, he could prepare Arthur or whoever to live without him. If he wanted to live the rest of his days free from all of this, to run away with her, then he need only to meet her in a year. If he's not there by sunset, then he'll never see her again. If he is, then they can see what might have been all those years ago. Vivian didn't wait for his answer, but spurred on her horse. Without looking back, she rode for the sea, back home, to Brittany. Next week, we'll follow Lancelot on his ridiculously short journey to knighthood. Arthur will get moderately drunk and lose his wife, but not like that. And we'll pick back up with the unfolding story of Merlin and Vivian.